Well, hello. Hope you're well. Thank you so much for joining us for this online message this weekend at Deep Rivers Church. It's summer, so people are out and about. So if that's you, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, even though you might be out of town or on vacation or whatever. If you're not feeling well, hopefully you bounce back and you'll be able to join us again real quick. I have in my hand a copy of this week's worship guide. I'm just going to read through it super quick. Don't tune me out. We are doing a summer sports drink drive. There's a big pile out in the lobby that gets a little bit bigger each Sunday, so we can bless the Lower Dolphin football team with Gatorades after their practice in September and October. So next time you're at the building, drag over a case of Gatorade. We are having a baptism and picnic on August 24th, so it's 3 weeks away. If you are interested in getting baptized, please contact the church. It'll be at 1 o'clock at the property right over there on Swatara Creek, just around the corner from the 7-Eleven. We're going to a Senators baseball game on August 30th, so there's details in the email about that as well. There's a women's retreat for September 13th. So be aware of that. Again, check your email for some details about all that. This week, it's Equip class. Tomorrow night, Monday night. Wednesday prayer house. We had a great fifth Wednesday prayer house. We had some guests, some high school kids, just recent graduates. They came. We had 23 people, I think, for prayer and praise house. Friday is the Men's Connect study, and this coming Saturday is the second Saturday of the month. So we will have a men's breakfast at Soda Jerk. And again, our migrant camp trips are the second and fourth Tuesday. So it's not this week, but next week. I think it's the 12th. All right. We are doing a summer sermon series on different Bible characters, Bible biographies. And somebody asked me this week, they said, hey, who are we doing on Sunday? One of the guys at the Friday morning men's study said, who's the message about? And I said, it's about Deborah. And this person who's been in the faith a long time said, I don't know anything about Deborah. So there's a good chance that when I say, hey, tell me something about the Bible character Deborah, you might not have a whole lot to say. Well, hopefully in a little while you'll be able to have a better understanding. So the story of Deborah is seen in Judges, the book of Judges, chapter 4 and 5. I'm going to read a big section here from Judges chapter 4. It says, again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, now that Ehud was dead. So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, the king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. Sisera, the commander of his army, was based in Harosheth Haggogim, because he had 900 chariots fitted with iron and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years. They cried to the Lord for help. Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lebedith, was leading Israel at the time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went up to her to have their disputes decided. She sent for Barak, the son of Abinadab, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go take with you 10,000 men from Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River, and give him into your hands. Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go. Certainly I will go with you, said Deborah. But because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours, for the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. So Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh. There Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali, and 10,000 men went up under his command. Deborah also went up with him. Now Heber the Kenite had left the other Kenites the descendants of Obab, Moses' brother-in-law, and pitched his tent by the great tree in the Zenin near Kadesh. When they told Sisera that Barak, the son of Abedam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera summoned from Harosheth Hagoyim to the Kishon River all his men and his 900 chariots fitted with iron. Then Deborah said to Barak, "Go. This is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you?" So Barak went down Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. At Barak's advance, the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots, an army by the sword. And Sisera got down from his chariot and fled on foot. Barak pursued the chariots and the army as far as Harosheth Hagoyim, and all of Sisera's troops fell by the sword. Not a man was left. Here's the rest of the story. Sisera runs for his life. Jael, another woman, actually kills Sisera with a tent peg. So this morning we kind of have two women that are both heroes. Okay, one of them leads a battle basically, and the other one kills the opposing general with a tent peg. Then the rest of the story is really found in chapter 5. It's called the Song of Deborah. It's a praise song of Deborah and Barak. It's actually pretty long. It's 31 verses. So kind of Judges chapter 4 and 5. So let me give you a little bit more of the background and some of the big themes that are going on. What we see here is the judgment cycle has begun again. If you know about the history of Israel, they did well, they obeyed. Well, this was the cycle that they fell into. They would serve God and they would obey. Great. Then they would become complacent. They got kind of spiritually lazy. And when that happened, they would sin, turn away from God, Yahweh, turn away from their Jehovah God. And when that happened, God would bring calamity. Oftentimes they would be enslaved or oppressed by another people. Then they would cry out. And then they would repent. And then they would be delivered. And we kind of see this cycle playing out over and over again. That's what's going on here. They would be delivered. They would serve God and obey him. And then the cycle, unfortunately, would repeat. They would become complacent. They would sin. They would become oppressed. And it just, the cycle goes over and over again. Our continual drift towards sin and sins, whether it's the nation of Israel, the Hebrew people, or whether it's true in our own life, our continual drift to sin sort of says something about us, says something about humanity. But more importantly, God's continual grace and mercy says something about him. No matter how often that cycle spins, God's grace and mercy is always there. Though Israel kept forsaking him, he continued to work with them and for them. It's true for Israel. It's true for us as God's people. God loved Israel so much, too much. No, God loved Israel too much to let them go their own way. I guess you can't love somebody too much. But he loved them too much to let them go their own way. I found this quote: "There may be times when people wish God would leave them alone. But ultimately, we should be thankful for his continual dealing with us, even when it's uncomfortable." Okay, so it says something about humanity, but it also says something about God, this judgment cycle. Even when God deals with people in this way, it may take time for them to turn back. They've been in bondage, if you will, being oppressed by the Canaanites for 20 years before this story with Deborah plays out. And even here, God uses a different oppressor. You never heard of Jabin, the king of Canaan. God will and can use anything to get our attention in order to keep us better aligned with his will. So God is creative, and he will find different ways to get your attention and to rattle your cage and to kind of wake us up spiritually. All right, what about Deborah? What does the passage say about Deborah? It says, first off, Deborah was a prophet. Now, is it unexpected for God to raise up a woman prophet? it's rare, but there it is in the text. You really can't argue with what the text says. But if you think about it, it's not that big of a stretch. Maybe we shouldn't be so shocked. In the New Testament, it's clear that God grants prophetic gifts to women. That's Acts 21, and it's used productively in Acts 11. So in the New Testament, we see the Spirit of God being given to men and women, that we all have the ability to hear God's voice. So maybe we shouldn't be so shocked that God raised up Deborah to be a prophet, to be his spokesperson to the people of Israel. In fact, there's several female prophets. Even in the Old Testament, Miriam, Exodus 15, Huldah, a lady you maybe never heard of, 2 Kings 22. In the New Testament, we have Anna, Luke 2, and then even Philip's 4 daughters in Acts 21. So Deborah is a prophet, but she's also a judge. This is the book of Judges. It says, she held court under the palm of Deborah in the hill country of Ephraim. The Israelites went up to her to have their disputes decided. Now, if you think it's odd for a woman, Deborah, to be a prophet, is it even odder or even more unexpected for God to raise up a woman to be a judge? Again, I know this might push you to strange and uncomfortable places. I'm probably overstating that a little bit. But the fact is, God did raise up Deborah to be a prophet and a judge. And the truth is that she's a heroic leader for Israel in a civil, political, and military sense. This is the story. This is the truth of God's word as we believe it played out. And you can't deny that God raised up this woman to be a leader of Israel. It's obvious that many women are used greatly, have been used greatly, and are being used greatly today. You look back at the history of our faith, women have had a huge role, a huge impact in expanding the kingdom. In this story, Deborah gives Barak a message from God. So she's a prophet. She hears from God, shares it with Barak. She knew that God didn't call her alone to deliver Israel. And she knew that God wanted to use Barak in it. Okay, so she's got a right sense of it. God wants to use Barak. She's not the savior of Israel. So Deborah says to Barak, the God of Israel commands you. And then she gives the order that God has given to her. And Barak says back to Deborah, if you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go. Interesting. Then Deborah says to Barak, I will go with you, but the honor will not be yours. The Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. So it's a fair question. Was it unwise? Was it a weakness to ask Deborah to come with him? Sisera goes, I'm not going unless you go with me. Was that foolish? Was it unwise? Was it a sign of weakness? What we do know, I think you could say, it suggests that he trusted more in Deborah's relationship with God than his own relationship with God. I don't think he was arguing with Deborah that, no, God didn't tell you that. But it seems you can kind of infer that he had more faith in Deborah's understanding and relationship with God than his own. I found this quote too. Barak preferred Deborah's physical presence to the invisible presence of God. But somewhat surprisingly, Barak, he's still mentioned in Hebrews 11 as a hero of the faith. But his confidence rested in Deborah's influence with God rather than his own. So no honor came to him that day of victory. And a follow-up thought is, let us be faithful in weakness, even if weak in faith. Okay, so our faithfulness is seen in what we do and not how we feel. Okay, now he might have felt like, I need Deborah to go, but he still went. All right, so again, it's an interesting conversation, and Deborah's honest. There will be no glory for you. Barak would not defeat Sisera; a woman would. Okay, It says, then Deborah said to Barak, go. This is the day the Lord has given you Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you already? Barak and all who went with him showed real courage in facing Sisera and his army. So Deborah might be a hero of the story, but she's not the only one. Barak and his men showed incredible courage to face Sisera's army with all these iron chariots. They were outgunned, if you will. They are fighting against the superior technology. It says, you can also tell from me, they're also fighting on a plain, which would give great advantage to those with chariots. They came down from Mount Tabor. And again, the words of Deborah, has not the Lord gone ahead of you? Those are the words of a king. Those are the words of a general leading their troops. You can see a similar thing in 1 Samuel chapter 8. So Deborah has courage. Deborah is sharing the responsibility. But we also see Barak's response to her is kind of an intriguing thing. All right. 4 things. I think there's 4 things that we can remember from the life of Deborah. Again, some Bible characters are easier to relate to than others. And to think of yourself as having anything in common with a female prophet and a female judge in the Old Testament might be a stretch, but there's still 4 things I think. And the first one is this: we really, really need to be aware that prosperity and contentment, good times, easy times, often lead to complacency. Okay? It's true for countries, it's true for societies, it's true for a church, it's true for you as an individual. We need to be aware that contentment, prosperity, good times, a lack of trial can lead us to complacency. Because Israel neglected to glorify God in the good times, they were forced to seek him in times of trouble. The idea is we seek God all the time. We serve God, we obey God all the time, not just when our cage gets rattled, not just when something bad happens. And again, the same is true for us today. God uses tough times to wake up his people and point us back to our need to trust him, to serve him, to worship him, to obey him. 4 words: to trust him, to serve him, to worship him, and to obey him even in the good times. It's kind of funny, 2 quotes I think. I think it was C.S. Lewis who said, pain is God's megaphone. That's how God gets our attention, through some sort of pain in our lives. The thought, I think I kind of had this thought, is we're in America, we like revival, but we also want a roaring stock market. We want good times, easy times, a good economy. We want everything to be comfortable for us, and at the exact same time we desire revival. I'm not sure it always works that way. What does it take to get people's attention to the deeper things of life? Sometimes it's hard times, all right? So we need to be aware the danger of comfort, the danger of contentment. The second thing I think we need to learn is that God calls us for courage, and he calls us to be obedient. Among Israel's judges, Deborah was unique. She assertively and boldly led by example. It looks like she's going to the battlefield. She's assertive. Deborah had many jobs. She was a wife. We can assume that maybe she was a mother. She was a judge. She was a prophet. You can make an argument that she's something of a warrior when she's encouraging the men into battle. Judges chapter 5, we see her as a songwriter giving praise to God. We also live in many different roles. You have many different jobs, many different hats, all right? If you have an employer, you're an employee. You have a role in your family, son, daughter, husband, father, whatever that, uncle, whatever that is, you have a role there. In your relationships with your neighbors, relationships with other people here at church, you wear different hats. Deborah had a lot of different responsibilities. Again, God calls us to be faithful and obedient in every area of our life. No matter how big or how small, no matter how, what am I looking for? No matter how big, no matter how small, no matter how public, and no matter how private. Okay, so whether your responsibilities are big or small, we need to live obedient if it's public or if it's private, either way, we need to have courage and obedience in both. Sadly, the later kings of Israel did not follow Deborah's example. As their hearts went, so went the nation of Israel. Deborah led by example and modeled courage, swift action, obedience, and a willingness to speak the truth, standing behind those she called to action. In other words, those who in God's name call others to their duty should also be ready to assist them in it. So Deborah modeled this kind of leadership. She called Barak to do a hard thing, but she also was supporting, encouraging him, and behind him all the way. The third thing I think we can learn from the life of Deborah is that she trusted God. We just need to be a people that trust God. Although Deborah's courage was legendary, you could say the confidence didn't come from her abilities or Israel's army. The army was outnumbered by Sisera's chariots, so her confidence not in the number of men, her confidence not in Barak and his great strategy, not in the army of Israel. Her confidence is in God. She trusted God. While Sisera trusted his army, Deborah trusted in God's character, his power, and his provision. I think the character part is the key. If we want to trust in God's power and provision, we have to trust in his character first and foremost. There's a passage I thought of when I was looking through this. It's Psalm 26-8. You might have heard it. This I know, the Lord gives victory to his anointed. He answers from his heavenly sanctuary with the victorious power of his right hand. This is the key. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. They are brought to their knees and fall, but we rise up and stand firm. So what is your trust going to be in, the chariots or God? Is your trust going to be in the visible, the things that you can see, the things that you can touch? That's what they're talking about. You're going to have your trust, your faith in the things that are seen or in the character of God. Some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God, knowing that God was not only for Israel, but had gone before them. He's for us, and he goes before us. It was all the strength that Deborah needed to take action and inspire others to step out in faith. The fourth thing I think we can learn from the life of Deborah is following her victory over the Canaanites, Deborah and Barak did what Israel had failed to do since the days of Joshua, and that is give the glory and honor and praise to God. They did not hesitate to worship. Again, Judges chapter 4 is the story. Judges chapter 5, all 31 verses of it, is a song of praise. It's giving God the credit and the glory that he is due. Complacency and the lie of self-sufficiency had been dealt with by Israel's leadership at this moment. They recognized that no matter what they or their army had done, that God deserved the credit. And again, the challenge for us is we need to imitate this behavior and always give credit and praise to God when it's due, which is probably more often than you think, more often than you realize. There's 4 words that I just would like us to kind of ponder, and that the first word is complacency. Are you in a place of complacency? Are you in a place of comfort? When you look back on your life, you might say, I grew the most spiritually when something hard was going on. So trials obviously refine us more than anything else. And when we're blessed with a comfortable time, is there a measure of complacency that creeps in? And that's what we see in the judgment cycle. for the nation of the Hebrew people, the nation of Israel, but we see it in our own lives. So are you in a place of complacency, and how is that helping you or allowing you in a negative way to kind of let down your guard spiritually? Where do you need some courage? We've talked about courage a little bit this summer as we've talked through these different biographies. Are there conversations that you need to have? Deborah was a great example of courage. So where are we kind of being a little too wimpy? Where do we need a little bit more courage? Deborah trusted God. How is your level of trust? Do you trust him? Now there's going to be times when we have situations and it's going to be tempted to be anxious, be tempted to worry. But when you get your equilibrium back, and hopefully soon, are you in a place where you can really trust God? And the last one is gratitude. Do you show God gratitude? Do you show him what you appreciate? Do you tell him? Do you worship him? Okay? Are you a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of person? You know, it's easy to focus on the things we wish we were different. It's easy to be a half glass full person. But are we willing to look and see what God has given to us, not just what we don't have, to be a people with a grateful heart? You know, we need to, I think, have a default of gratitude more than we do. So, and that lie of self-sufficiency, that's huge. That's what happened, I think, to the nation of Israel. They think we can do it on our own. We don't need God. And that was part of the complacency that slipped them into sin and rebellion, if you will. So, all right, again, thank you so much for joining us. Take care. God bless. Bye.